Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. I am one of your hosts, Bill D'Alessandro, and today we have one of my favorite categories of business, sometimes controversially amongst our group, is equipment rental. So this one rents equipment to Hollywood, porta potties, among many other things, for movie production. They've got $1.2 million of hard assets that they move around California and rent to movie sets. They earn about a 30% yield on those assets. So it's a pretty cool deal. And then at the end, Heather and I have a cool conversation about specialized lenders, acquiring businesses from your parents, and a couple other things from a lender's perspective that Heather really adds some interesting color on. So without any further ado, I hope you really enjoyed this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.
This episode is sponsored by Acquisition Lab. Acquisition Lab, created by Walker Diebel, author of Buy Then Build, How to Outsmart the Startup Game, is an accelerator with a highly vetted cohort-based educational and support community for people serious about buying a business. After going through the lab's month-long intensive, you have ongoing access to almost daily Q&A sessions with advisors, regular live deal review forums with Walker, handpicked vendors for your deal team, and a very active Slack group with other searchers on this path. Our team personally understands how to buy a business and will help navigate all the complexities of the process, as well as provide a trusted framework, tools, and resources to support you from search to close. The Acquisition Lab recently celebrated its 70th business being acquired and well over $100 million in aggregate transaction value. The lab is here to stand by your side so you can take the right action at the right time and avoid wasting countless hours trying to go it alone. For more information, check out acquisitionlab.com, link is in our show notes, or email the lab's director, Chelsea Wood, at chelsea@buythenbuild.com.
Heather, happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday. We made it.
We made it. We had a fun one yesterday where we talked about $50 million a year of shapewear, but I think this one is even sexier.
This is glamorous. We're going glamorous on this one. I think this is going to be fun.
This deal we have today is part of one of my favorite categories of businesses, which is rental businesses. But this one's a little different because of what it rents and the end market that it rents to. So this is a fun one. Okay, so this is titled, it's on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube. It's a film and motion picture equipment rental company for sale. The asking price is $3 million. And you know what? Before we even get to the asking price, the photo here is of a porta potty on wheels. I kind of just a lot of times they use stock photos. This is not that.
No, it says a royal flush too. It's really
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And assuming this is not a stock photo, the website for this business is called it'sinthecan.com, which is so money because their end market is the film industry. As they call it, it's in the can, like the film pun. I love it.
Yeah, and I love the title is also for sale, $3 million OBO.
Or best offer. Willing to bet they don't have a broker.
I think you're right about that. Yes.
Yep, because it is just listed by Mike Persky, all lowercase. So no broker, for sale by owner. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
So asking price $3 million, cash flow $400,000. So that's what? That's like 8 times?
Yeah, we're way off there.
7.5 times. All right, it's a little rich. Maybe you should have got a broker. So he makes $400,000 a year on $1.3 million of revenue. And it also has listed that they have $1.25 million of furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which in this case, I think means mobile porta potties. So the description, it says, when filming on location, we get the call. We rent equipment to the film industry, and we are for sale for $3 million or best offer. We own our building, but it is not included in the sale. It is for rent. When Hollywood is out on location filming, we rent the restroom trailers, changing room trailers, hair and makeup trailers, trash bins, heaters, air conditioning, lighting, generators, and 24 other types of equipment needs for on-location filming. Our market does not stop there, as we also rent our rental equipment to events and weddings. We also have other income streams, such as handyman services. So when Hollywood needs things changed, like flat screen TVs, removed and replaced in a bar for a quantum leap scene, or a ceiling fan in a house removed and replaced for a Criminal Minds scene. And by the way, scene in this case is not spelled Scene. It is spelled Seen.
Yes, it is.
Which for a person that works in Hollywood, you would not expect. So just Michael is not here to rip on the typos, but you got it. Heather, don't you want to give him a pass? Like, this isn't a broker. Like, this is a guy.
Yeah. No, I think this was texted in. Wait till you get to the end. I mean, there's a lot of typos in here. I think he texted this listing in.
Oh boy. Okay, great. So our handyman services also include fixing things that film crews damage when on location, like broken sprinklers and plumbing, damaged concrete, drywall, and painting repairs. Typos riddled. I'm just blowing through them here. Our services also include renting and setting up catering tents, tables, and chairs so the crews can eat. We rent changing tents, background holding tents, and often rent the lighting, heating, and cooling for these tents. We have 8 restroom trailers. They're state of the art. They have 2 station trailer units up to 7 station restroom trailers. We have our own restroom pumping truck so we can service our own restrooms in the field, and we get paid accordingly. Our restroom trailers are all solar, 100% self-contained, and have onboard generators to run the air conditioning. As Hollywood expects, only the best. We have a lunch trailer, which is 51 feet long, and 2 full-size slide-outs, which opens up to a seat for 100 meals. A lunch trailer? With its own solar generator and air conditioning, this 6-figure rental trailer is in high demand. They do labor service. They trash sweep. They clean up the service. Our wrangle department is skilled labor to help locations navigate through their day as they move around. And their website is itsinthecan.com. Check it out. That's how the listing ends.
Yeah.
Heather, what do you think?
Well, this is really interesting. I think that they're valuing, they're valuing it wrong. They're trying to value it on the equipment plus the cash flow, and that just doesn't work, right? I mean, you need this equipment to generate the cash flow. I guess it's underutilized, maybe is one way to look at it, but it is an interesting business. I mean, I've looked at some things that are similar to this, bigger companies before. And there's there's a post-COVID boom that they all had. Production all stopped, and then they started it back up again. There was a really a huge boom for a while. And then you contrast with today, and there's an actor strike, and I'm pretty sure in Southern California, there's no production going on right now. So it has some industry risks, I think, when you look at it that way. I mean, the equipment, he's got quite a fleet here. He put a lot of money into that, and that's what he's trying to extract the value on. But he's only making $400,000 of cash flow, and that's probably adding back his salary. That's SDE, I'm guessing, or something like that. And so that's not enough cash flow for the cost of all this. Yeah, and it's nice stuff. These are nice trailers. Like you said, Hollywood expects it to be nice, and that costs a lot of money.
Yeah, the thing that's tough, and I put it on YouTube on their website, It's in a Can. It has this slideshow of all the stuff that they rent, and it is nice stuff. But so at the same time, they got $1.2 million of stuff, and they're making $400,000 a year on it. I mean, that's not terrible, right? Like, that's like a 33% yield on the assets. Pretty good. And I'm willing to bet the life on these things is pretty long.
Probably.
This isn't like construction equipment that's getting rode hard and you've got to replace it, every 5 years.
Right.
So this is not, if Mills were here, I think he would be okay with it. He's like the CapEx, the depreciation is a real expense guy. But in this business, I think it probably stretches. So from like a cash yield on assets point of view, it's really not bad. But I don't think you're going to sell this business for basically more than the value of the assets here, right?
No, that's right. I mean, and we see this a lot in a lot of other CapEx intensive businesses, small businesses, where the seller really wants you to pay one price for the cash flow and another price in addition to that for the assets. And that just doesn't make any sense from a pure cash flow return perspective. So I think that's what you're seeing here. And of course, it's not broker listed. They do say at the very bottom of the listing that they raised 9 children and put them through college on this business. So it is kind of interesting. I wonder what the real cash flow is, again, because it's not broker listed. You want to kind of see the numbers to know whether is it really 400,000? Is it more? Is it maybe less? But one thing that concerns me is that the real estate is owned by the sellers and they're not selling it. So, and it's in California. And so a very common problem there is that maybe they're not paying market rent to themselves in that. So when you look at that 400,000, that's not going to be 400,000 to you when you go start paying market rent to the sellers. And I've seen a number of deals fall apart like that where they thought they were getting a certain cash flow number. When they figured out what market rent was going to be, it fell apart completely. And I think that would happen here. The value of this business is probably more in the real estate than it is in the actual cash flow, depending
That's a
on what
good
they bought.
point. I mean, California real estate can be very pricey, right?
It
So,
can.
I mean, you
Yeah.
may lose easily 100 grand a year, right, to rent it back from the owners. So instead of 400K, you're down to 300K.
Right.
And they want $3 million. It's a 10X. Like that's just going to be tough. Now,
Yeah.
valuation aside, though, Heather, is this a good business?
I think it is. I mean, I think I like equipment rental just like you do. If you can really get your arms around the useful life of the equipment and your maintenance capex, it's great because, you get a great return for what you spent on that equipment. It is, there's some logistics to this one I think that make it a little challenging. I don't know how big of a staff you might need. It's a little more tricky than just renting out. They're really coordinating where this stuff is going, they're putting it up, they're putting it down. So it's not pure equipment rental. There's a lot of service here. So not my favorite type of equipment rental when it gets that complicated. And then you kind of wonder, how are they pricing? How are they estimating? Because it probably is a little tricky to make sure that your price point is right for each one of these jobs.
I mean, I bet it's all kind of negotiated, right?
Hmm.
Like they hit a price and they show up and we'll throw in a generator, because there's not a ton of marginal cost for them to bring one more generator. They just want the job.
Right. Right. And I'm sure there's a little bit of competition, right? There's probably a lot of little companies like this servicing different productions, and you've got to get to know the right people on those productions. So there's a lot of relationship, especially in Hollywood for sure. No casting couch, I don't think, but you got to know people.
Yep. Yep. So in general, one of the reasons I like equipment businesses is because they're one of those businesses that can make money while you sleep.
Yeah.
I always think like you drive down the highway and you see all those construction barrels or barriers or whatever, and very often like stencil spray painted on there is like some dude's name, right?
Hmm.
Like Anderson Rentals, and you're like, this guy is ringing them for $2 a day for every single one of these cones. And they've been here for 4 years,
Yeah.
you know? And there's how many hundreds and hundreds or thousands of them. And I go, man, that must be a good business.
Right. But those maybe stay where they're, placed a lot longer. And these sound like they would move around a lot. So I mentioned I looked at a business that was similar to this about 2 years ago. Maybe it was 1 year ago. It was during the post COVID boom. And one of the problems for the buyer was finding where everything was to inspect it because it was all being, it's working, it's out in the field, it's out on production. How are you going to go see all of this? And do they have good tracking to know where it all is? That would be interesting too, because I had definitely seen a few businesses where when you get right down to it, they couldn't actually tell you where all of their equipment was.
Yep. And I think that is one of the key things that makes an equipment rental business good or bad, because so much of the cost is in the bring it out there, bring it back, turn it over, make sure it's not broken for the next guy, the transition, right? The best rental businesses are when you can rent somebody a thing and it sits there for a year, right?
Yeah.
Or more, just ring in the register, right? Because it's the transition that causes you heartache, pain, return on hassle, all that stuff. So I think you're right. In this case, there's a lot of setup, tear down, tents, etc. Because the thing about, I think, a lot of Hollywood filming is they move around. Like the whole point of this is on scene rental. So like when the production is moving around and they need to pop up their infrastructure, these guys pop it up and tear it down. So you're sitting here with $1.25 million in assets yielding between 300 and 400 grand, depending on market rent. That's a lot of work for 25% rate of
That's what I
return.
think. I think it's a lot of work. I think they've got a pretty good sized staff. And, when I hear 9 children put through college, I wonder how many of those kids are working in the business for free. I would make
Interesting.
my kids do it.
Yeah, and it would be a great experience for them.
Yes, yeah, it would. But that's another cost, right? A hidden cost. How many of the family members are working for free and you're going to have to replace them? Because I do think this is pretty labor intensive. I think it'll attract a lot of buyers if they can get the price to the right place, because it is kind of exciting to think you might be on movie sets and meeting famous people and whatnot. Of course, you are at the toilets, but it doesn't matter. That's still exciting. So I think it will attract some buyers, but I think there's some challenges once you get into the numbers to know how much you can really make in this business as a new buyer.
All right, taking a quick pause here. I have something to tell you. This is Michael. I hate bookkeeping. I hate bookkeeping. I hate doing HR. I hate doing all that kind of stuff. But for bookkeeping, I have found a solution. It is my friend Charlie's business called cloudbookkeeping.com. So that's cloudbookkeeping.com. They are your perfect partner if you want to get bookkeeping out of your hair and focus on making your your customers happier and more successful. So please give them a call. Call Charlie, cloudbookkeeping.com. Tell them we sent you. They're a great way if you're a business buyer, if you're a business owner, you're tired of hassling with getting your bookkeeping done. He's got a whole fleet of people that are well-trained and work for him. He's located here in San Antonio, so I can tell you because of that, he's awesome. And they're a great partner for you to potentially call to help with all your bookkeeping needs so you can do the important stuff in your business rather than worry about getting your books right. So give Charlie a call, cloudbookkeeping.com. And now back to the episode.
So one thing I just noticed, and I think I just figured out the investment thesis for this business. Under the support and training part of this listing, it says, seller will stay on at no charge for 30 days after closing if desired and will be available for additional 60 days. Should the owner, and here it is, need or want more instruction, I can be retained hands-on for $50 an hour thereafter. Let's just hire the guy to run it full time for $50 an hour.
Yeah, right. Help us out here. Yeah, that would.
And now we've got a passive investment.
Yeah, right. Maybe, but they don't really say they're retiring, but maybe that's what it is. It may just be they're tired, like this is a tough business. They've been in it a long time and they're getting tired. Oh, I think it started in 2015, so it actually isn't that old. It's
yeah. Yeah, I think that's because at the end it says, my wife and I have raised our 9 children, put them through college, and it is time, and then it cuts off.
It is
so
Tim.
I assume it is Tim, and it is Tim, and then something, it's Tim for something.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably retirement.
Yeah, probably.
One thing that shocked me is attached to this listing is a PDF file called 2022 Income by Customer.
Ooh.
And I clicked it. And without exaggeration, it is a dump of invoices from QuickBooks.
Oh my goodness.
So this, and this is public. I feel insane putting this on the screen. This is with memos that shows you exactly what they rented, and exactly the pricing. So here is all of their pricing beginning 8/12/2022 all the way to today.
Wow.
Of every single thing they've ever rented and exactly what they charge for it. This is not a thing you would want your competitors to have. I would not think.
This is why you have a broker involved.
Yes.
And yeah. Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, here's an advertisement for brokers. This is why you hire them. So you don't do things like this.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I feel like I say this all the time, but people all the time come to me and they're like, oh, I bet you love it when you find a deal without a broker. You can really get a good price on it. And I'm like, no, I would rather the seller have a broker and pay a fair price for the business, because it's this type of stuff. Like, let's say we wanted to buy this business, right? You could never buy this business. One, because the guy thinks it's worth 10 times adjusted EBITDA, right? So you're never going to get there on price. But two, he has no idea how to do a transaction. Like when you start talking to him about working capital and accounts receivable and payable and all, like he's going to look at you like you're trying to rip him off because he doesn't have a broker to tell him that these are normal things. And I've been there and I hate it. I have found businesses without brokers and referred them to brokers.
Yeah. Right. I've worked on them as lenders. So, as a lender, you get deals where however the buyer brings them to you. And sometimes without a broker, I'll just think in the back of my head, I don't know if we'll ever close this deal. And if we do, it's going to be next year. that they just drag on and on and on. And you're right, they tend to fall apart. It takes an awful lot. The ones that I have seen be successful, the buyer convinced the seller to hire good counsel right away. Good M&A counsel that understood what to do, and that person held the deal together. But I agree, a broker is almost always better than no broker, in my opinion.
Yes. And by the way, same for lawyers.
Yeah,
I have done the same thing, had a seller who didn't have a lawyer and referred them to lawyers and gone. I've actually once paid the seller's legal fees for the love of God, hire a lawyer. I will even pay for it.
yeah. Well, or the wrong. I'm sure we've all seen the wrong type of lawyer kill the deal. That's certainly sad. And as soon as I see that or I hear that, I just tell my buyer, we should probably not waste our time. Let's look at something else. Not going to
It's
work.
tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. Overall, I like the idea. I mean, I would like it better if it was just the porta potties, to be honest, right? So they've got, I mean, the hodgepodge of porta potties and tents and tables and trailers, and they've got pictures of Ferraris here for pictures. Like, I bet they also are like sub renting, like film equipment company wants a Ferrari, you don't have one, I go rent one for the day, and then mark it up double and make it happen. Like, these guys are like the make it happen guys, which God bless them, right? They're like you call these guys on the phone and they make it happen. And that's by the way, a great way to start a business. If you can make shit happen, you will always have customers. If you answer the phone, make shit happen like same day, you will always have customers. So I'm not knocking this dude at all. Like, 8 years, built this business up to $400,000 cash flow, put 9 kids through college. Freaking awesome. Good on you, man. I would think if I did buy this business, I would be looking for ways to streamline it. I would be trying to figure out, how do we not do the lunch tables anymore? Maybe we can find a subcontractor that is reliable that does the lunch tables. How can I because what they're good at is relationships, answering the phone, making it happen the same day. How do I double down on that and maybe sub out all of the owning of the assets, and take a booking fee or something?
Yeah, right.
Monetize relationships, but owning all these assets, all these little diddly piddly things, that's a lot of pain in the ass.
Yeah, and all the service that you're providing, even catering. So it's a lot of logistics and a lot of hard work, I think, for this business the way it is today. And you're right, if it's just the porta potties, but however, Hollywood wants what Hollywood wants, and maybe that's really the only way you can be in that industry is give them what they want. It's always something different. It's movies,
That's true.
after all. Yeah, they're not going to be wanting the same thing every time.
Yeah, you're just a fixer, and that's super valuable. But I don't know. I mean, how do you grow this business? It's not, like a lot of other businesses, like this is fundamentally a local business, right? They're based in Hollywood. Normally you would say, let's go to adjacent geographies, or let's add on adjacent services. But it sounds like they're already doing all the freaking services. And how do you go to additional geographies? There's only one Hollywood.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you get this any bigger.
I don't either, but I did see something interesting in the other deal that I looked at. It was, like I said, the time frame was post-COVID. Everybody's trying to get things done, and supply chain was crazy. And they started doing routes for FedEx. FedEx.
Wow.
Yeah, and it became like a whole separate sales channel where they were using some of their trucks and trailers for FedEx, but they had to sort of customize them a little bit differently for the FedEx stuff versus what they were doing for the film industry. So it's logistics. At the end of the day, you've got trucks and trailers, and you're moving stuff around. You could maybe, but then you're really getting away from your core business. And so I don't know. I think it's very tough to expand a business like this. Definitely.
I mean, it becomes a hustle, right? Like, this is a very successful hustle. This guy's making $400,000 a year on a hustle, right? Doing whatever needs to be done. And yeah, he could add FedEx routes. He could add adjacent services. But if I could give this guy one bit of advice, it's try to figure out what it is you do, right? Because this is just a agglomeration of hustles, lots of different things.
Yeah.
And make this into a business rather than a hustle. And that, I think, would make it much more saleable.
Yeah, agree. And as a hustle, who can take this over? You have to be good at all those things the day one. Well, that's pretty tough.
You know who can take this over? There are exactly 9 people on planet Earth who can take
Right.
this over.
I know. Yep. Kids. And they don't
Right?
want it, obviously. They went to college and they're going to do something else. So they don't want this business for a reason, probably.
Yep. This would be a killer business to hand down to a child.
Yeah.
Killer,
Right. Yeah.
right? Relationship based, like you've been working it on your growing up, makes a great living, $400,000 a year. Man, if just one of his kids would want this, that would be awesome.
Yeah. And maybe he doesn't know, but his kids could get an SBA loan and buy it from dad. So if he's listening,
Interesting.
they
So,
could do that.
so you could, but at the same time, though, oh, I guess this isn't enough money. In general, though, that's a risky proposition from an estate tax point of view,
Yeah.
right? Because
Sure.
you're passing capital kind of up the chain the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, you would be under the $11 million limit because it's a $3 million deal. But in general, I always think this is a sticky wicket. And I get interpersonally why people buy businesses from their parents. But you have to really pay attention when buying a business from a parent because that capital, in theory, is coming back to you one day. In theory, I mean, I know people have different arrangements, right? But even if it doesn't come back to you, even if it's all going to charity, Uncle Sam is still going to take his bite.
But yeah, when otherwise you wouldn't have to. Right. Right.
Right. So I often think in those situations, it is much better to have some sort of long-term earnout or some sort of,
Note.
continued
Mhm.
note or continued employment or something. Like you want to avoid the huge bolus going up the generational chain.
Very good point. Very good point. So, but I think that is the best. You're right. One of those 9 kids is the best buyer, or 2 of them. But a third party to come in and try to take this over, pretty tough.
Pretty tough. Yep. But in general, though, I like this category of rent durable things. I just like it to be longer and fewer categories of things.
Yeah, and I would like it to be more diverse. Like they kind of threw in weddings and other venues, but I'd love it to see more 50-50. Something like that plus Hollywood because Hollywood is a concentration and it's a risk.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're very leveraged to one end market.
Yeah, and they're not working right now. So guess what? If you had a loan on this, you would not be making your payment right now.
Woof. Yeah. That's so I was actually thinking this morning about kind of what makes, we talk all the time in the show about what makes a business saleable. Like there are plenty of good businesses out there and they're not saleable.
Right.
And one of the big reasons, maybe the biggest reason a business is not saleable is stability because it's going to get bought with debt usually, right?
Mhm. Right.
And if it's not going to get bought with debt, that shrinks your buyer pool dramatically, the all cash equity buyer. So usually gets bought with debt and debt has fixed monthly payments, right? And they generally, if you're going to have fixed monthly payments for 5 years,
That's
right? Or
right.
more, right?
That's
5
right.
to 10 years. And so when you buy a business with debt, you have to have pretty good confidence that this business is going to be stable, at least flat, right?
Yeah.
For
Right.
5 to 10 years.
Hmm.
And when you can't bet on that, it'll kill a business. Even if it's like, you zoom out and you just plot the point every year and it looks stable, but on a month-to-month basis, it's all over. There are months in there where you don't make your debt payment, and it becomes very hard.
Right. And I think that's lost on many sellers because they were founders and they did it without debt. And they think of their cash flow. So what if we have a bad month or a quarter? We just sort of hibernate and we come back and it's fine. For you, that's great, seller. But buyer has a ball and chain of a P&I payment every month. And you're right. I think that's just that sometimes that perspective is lost. And I've even seen brokers not really get that. Still kind of pushing that this is still a great business. Well, yeah, we're not saying it's a bad business. It's a business that doesn't belong having debt.
Right.
Yeah.
Great business to own,
Yeah.
tough business to buy with
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think this one sort of falls in that category.
Yeah. Agree.
Although, interestingly enough, probably easier to buy with debt because it's full of hard assets.
Yeah, you know what? People think that, but you really then have to go find a specialized lender that's just kind of lending on the value of that equipment. That's usually going to be a leasing company, and they don't like to lend on used equipment. They will give you leases on new equipment because they know how to liquidate it really well, and they don't worry too much about the cash flow. But on used equipment, it's actually not very easy to get a lender to just lend on the value of that because you have to have a special lender who knows just what they're going to do if you default to liquidate your porta potties.
That's a good point. Our body's hard to liquidate.
I personally do not know how to do that.
I
think
often wonder that about all asset-based lenders because most assets are hard to liquidate.
Right, they are. So you have to become very good at a niche. So leasing companies all have these little verticals and they become very good at just those. You can't just throw anything at them, any type of equipment, because they don't have a good way to liquidate just everything. So it's a misconception that having hard assets in a business will make it easier to get a loan, especially to acquire the business. Almost every lender in the SBA space is just lending on cash flow coverage, not on the value of the liquidated assets.
Yeah, which are in some ways easier and harder loans to get, the cash flow loan.
Yeah, I think that to me they're easier. I like to look at a deal that doesn't have the hard assets because I don't have to worry about capex. It just makes my cash flow a little bit easier to understand. And when I have to think about capex, the other thing I tell most of my clients is, if you're buying a business with a lot of equipment. Let's take landscaping. That's my favorite example. You're going to have to estimate capex. We don't know what it's going to be. And every single time I've closed a deal like that and talked to my client 6 months later, what are they telling me? I had to buy more equipment than I expected. I had to put more money into the equipment. And even though we padded the capex and we estimated it was still more. So you never really know what your cash flow is going to look like in a business that has a lot of equipment, used equipment.
Yeah. When you talk about specialized lenders choosing a vertical, you think about, it's because they know how to underwrite that vertical. And yeah, they can be part of it, but it's actually because if things go south, they know how to get their capital back in that vertical.
Right. That's exactly right. There's two types of underwriting. One is the cash flow lender wants to underwrite to low probability of default. This cash flow is so good. This business is so durable. The chances of you not being able to make the payment are very, very low. So I don't have to liquidate. The asset lender is the exact opposite. They're saying, well, you probably will, there's a chance you'll default. I'm not too worried about, I'm not going to go in too deep on the business because I know there's a certain chance you'll default. But when you do, I can recover most of my what I've laid out by liquidating the assets.
Yeah.
You see that in real estate a lot.
Which is in some ways the easiest asset to liquidate.
Yes.
Real estate.
Can be.
Yeah. Versus a bunch of porta potty trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool, Heather. I think this was a good one. Thanks for showing up on a Friday. I hope the listeners like it. I feel like these always come out probably on Tuesdays, and folks have no idea what we're talking about.
And we're saying Happy Friday, and they're like, no, it's only Tuesday.
I know. And then who knows when people listen to them. But
that's right.
I hope it's Friday wherever you are and whatever day it is. And we will see you on the next episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.